Welcome to your CMP information session. I really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your busy schedule and actually honoring the commitment that you made to yourself. So for that, give yourself a pat on the back, because I know there are a lot of different things out there that are pulling you in a whole bunch of different directions. But this is a really important thing that you can do for yourself. So we typically have 3 different types of people who attend this session. So I don't want you to feel like, gee, I don't know if I belong here. I know that when I attended my CMP information session, many, many, many moons ago, I was thinking that, like, I wonder, do I really belong here? The answer is yes, you do. We typically have 3 different types of folks who come to this session. The first are people who need an overview about the CMP program because they just aren't familiar with it. The second group are people who are about to fill out their application. And the third group who are really interested in learning about how to prepare for the exam. So if you fit into one of those categories, you're absolutely in the right place. Your questions will be answered by the end of the hour. And so stick with me, right? Now, when the session is done, I'm going to be sending you guys all a handout with all the links and the dates and the things that we're going to talk about today. So stick by your keyboard is really more important than taking notes, I guess. So first, we'll do some quick online class housekeeping today. Right, we'll talk about the history of the certification and its benefits, and then we'll get to the heart of the matter, the CMP process. And of course, we'll talk about preparing for your CMP exam, all with an idea that by the end of the hour, you'll have a personalized CMP action plan for yourself. Of course, we'll do discussion and questions throughout. So we need to figure out how to communicate to one another. I do like to keep the session really interactive. So we'll do some polls, but also I want you to feel free to ask questions as I'm speaking. So you need to know how to do that. Hopefully you'll find your control panel. And in that control panel, there's going to be something that you can click on to open your chat window. So I encourage you to do that right now. Open up that control panel, find the chat window, click on it. And then in that chat window, type in something like, hey, Ellen, or I can hear you, or whatever. There you go, Michelle. Good job. Great. Christina and M. Glick and T. Cook and T. Kaikowski, I don't know, C. Taylor, E. Baker. Good. I can see all of you. It's always helpful if you type in your first name, guys. Lenore, super. So I want you to ask questions. Hey, Leah. I want you to ask questions as I'm speaking. I can read and, good, Cindy. I can read and actually speak to you at the same time. And so don't hold all those questions to the end. So we're going to start, as a lot of these kinds of things do, with just some very quick introductions. And we're going to do that by launching a poll, I hope. Sometimes my polls work and sometimes they don't. But here we are, right? So I'm going to launch this poll. Go ahead and answer it for me. So I'm asking, are you a supplier or planner? What type of company you work for? If the type of company you work for is not in that list, please go ahead and type that in the chat window so that I get an idea. And most importantly, why are you interested in earning your CMP? And I say that this is most important because I think that, this is not an easy experience, right? We all have, hard time even just finding the time, right? And so if you have an idea about your reason why you're going to do this, that is going to see you through those tough times. Now, all this information is really helpful to me, so I want to thank you. I'm going to give it just another second or two, and then we will end the polling so that we can share the results with one another. And so We have mainly planners, right? I have one both. I like that. I have, we're mainly, well, the biggest group are association planners, I'm assuming. And then corporate planners, we have a hotelier, somebody who works for a CVB, somebody who's planning meetings for the government, somebody who's a DMC, somebody in a production company. I love all those things. That's really great. And it just shows, it illustrates a whole lot about the CMP. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. And then by far, your reason why is all of the above. So when things get hard, think all of the above. I think I'm really funny. So this is really helpful information for me. I appreciate you doing that. And we'll come back to polling in just a little bit. But of course, I need to introduce myself. Right? My name's Ellen Maiara. I'm an independent planner in Tampa, Florida. And my experience kind of runs the gamut as both a supplier and a planner. Now, when I was attending my CMP information session, I really felt like my career had plateaued. And I didn't know what I needed to do. In fact, I kind of wasn't sure that the CMP would be the thing to make the difference for me. So clearly, as I sit here today, very much involved in the CMP program, right? I must have had a conversion. So what did I gain? Well, we all come to this process with strong points and weak points. And so there are gaps, right, in our experience, in our education. And I got to fill in some of those gaps. I also built a network, right, which maybe sounds a little strange to you because we think of the CMP as an individualized endeavor. But that's because we don't think about life after the exam. And it's a good life after the exam. And there are many opportunities for you as a CMP. You'll be invited to CMP-only networking activities, right? Now, I absolutely experienced increased earnings, and we'll talk about that in just a few slides. But the thing that I really value the most is a sense of confidence, which is, you go, oh, what's that? Well, ultimately, it made me feel like I could open my own business. Now, whether your ultimate goal is to open your own business or to do something else, right? Just having that validation and that confidence is going to be enough to go after that bigger, larger goal. So we're going to start at the beginning, and the beginning is the organization that owns and administers the CMP program, and that organization is called the Events Industry Council. Now, this is a strange organization. I say it's strange because its members aren't people like you and me. Instead, its members are other organizations. So it's an association for associations. Their members are 30 international meetings, conventions, and exhibition industry member organizations. So it's likely an organization that perhaps you're a member of or familiar with within our industry is therefore a member of the Events Industry Council. Now, their mission is to develop programs that promote professionalism within our industry, and we can see how the CMP program clearly fits into that mission. The program itself was launched in 1985 with the idea that it would enhance knowledge and performance of meeting professionals, that it would promote the status and credibility of our profession, and that it would advance a uniform standard of practice. Now, CMP stands for Certified Meeting Professional, right? About a third of our current CMPs are our supplier partners. And there are currently more than 11,000 CMPs internationally in 55 countries. So today, the credential is recognized globally. It's a badge of excellence. And the qualifications are based on your professional experience, your education, and a rigorous exam. So the goals of the program are really important to us as we're thinking about taking the CMP exam. And the first bullet point I always think is really the most critical for us. What the Events Industry Council has done is they've identified a body of knowledge for us. They've said, this is what you need to know. And that's really important because there's no class that leads up to the CMP exam, right? And so we wouldn't know what to study, right? So that body of knowledge is called the CMP International Standards, or CMP-IS for short. And we're going to look at that later on in the hour. So the next thing was they said, okay, this is the body of knowledge. You need to know a certain amount in order to be considered certified. And so they've established a level of knowledge and performance required for certification. Now, as I said earlier, we all come to this process needing to learn something, right? As we learn things, we do better. That stimulates the advancement and the art of the art and science of meeting management, right? It increases our value as practitioners. And as I spoke earlier, right, you'll also be invited to unique networking opportunities. So we've already talked about a lot of these benefits. We've talked about professional development. I mentioned increased earnings, right? PCMA does an annual salary survey, and I saw the salary survey just recently came out, and their annual salary survey says that CMPs earn $9,500 more annually than their non-CMP counterparts. So let's just translate that, right? Let's say you're in your 20s, right? That means that by the time you retire, you will have earned more than $400,000 additionally in your career, right? So if you're looking for a little motivation, perhaps that would be some good motivation. I talked about personal achievement. We've talked about increased knowledge. We haven't so much talked about enhanced credibility. So I'm wondering, let's see if this poll works. It will not work. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about credibility myself. You know, as I meet somebody who has the CMP, what I know about them from the get-go is that they have made a significant investment in themselves within our industry, which for me gives them credibility. And so that's a really important thing to me. I also know that we have a shared experience and a shared vocabulary. So that's a very helpful thing. And you'll see that throughout your career as you earn your CMP. Now, the certification is recognized globally. As I said, it's in 55 different countries. I'm proud to say I taught the first 2 CMPs in Australia, but I've also taught folks all over the United States, Central America, South America, certainly Canada, Europe. I'm going around the world in a different direction than I usually do, in India, in the Middle East, and all over Asia. And so I can personally tell you that there are CMPs all over the world because I've taught them. Again, you'll be invited to CMP-only programs, and you'll be listed in the CMP directory. So that's a great set of benefits. So now we're getting to the heart of the matter, the CMP process. So this is kind of a bird's eye view, and we're going to look at each one of these steps in depth today. So your first job is to fill out an application. Once you submit your application, you'll get an email back that says, congratulations, you're now a CMP candidate, and you now have 1 year to take the exam. So the exam itself is offered quarterly. So in January, in May, in August, and in November, and for every day during those months. So what the next step, really, they say register for the exam. What I like to think of that as is that you're committing to take the exam during one of those time frames, right? I'm going to take the exam in November, right? Your next step then will be to schedule your exam appointment, and you get to choose the date, time, and location. The exam is offered in secure testing facilities. There are more than 400 of them globally. So it's likely that there will be one close to where you work or live. And then, of course, the last step is to take the exam. So let's start with the application. Now, the application is pretty straightforward, but it has no instructions in it. And so people are often able to just fill out the application and they hit what I call, it's the wall. You know, gee, I wonder if I'm doing this right. And so what I really think is an important step before you fill out your application is to read the current CMP handbook. That's where all the instructions and directions are going to be. And if you skip that step, you may be making a mistake with your application. And I'm going to provide you a link in the handout for the handbook, right? And so you can take a look at that today, right? Now, the application is actually an online submission. So you'll go to eventscouncil.org. And if you haven't done already, I'm going to show you. You can go to eventscouncil.org and you need to open an account for yourself, right? So actually you click on this thing that says account login, right? And this is where you want to open your account. So you just click on get started and it's very easy information to fill out. It'll take you 3 minutes at the most. And so it's good to, again, do this today. You could do it even as I'm chatting with you, right? So do that because your application is going to be done through that account. So in that account, you'll track your continuing educational activities and also upload all your application supporting documentation. In the past, there's been some pretty convoluted deadlines, really hard to understand. So they've done away with all those deadlines. So at any time, you can create and submit your application, you can submit your exam fee, and you can schedule your exam for any available testing window. You don't have to wait for any period there. So let's talk broadly about the application, right? The purpose of them having an application is that they want you to demonstrate, right, that you're ready to sit for this exam, right? And you do that by meeting one requirement in each section of the application. The application has 2 sections, so you have 2 requirements to meet. So it's one requirement in professional experience and one requirement in continuing education and internships. So let's look at section 1, which is professional experience, and you'll see the 3 possible requirements, right? So you only need to meet one of these. And remember, when I started, I said some of us are working toward being ready, right? We're not all ready right now. So don't go away because you go, oh, I don't meet any of these requirements. No, the conversation is intended for you as well, right? So option 1 says that you've completed at least 3 years of full-time employment in the meetings industry in a position where you have responsibility, right? Now you could be working toward that. Maybe you have 2 years, right? And you need 1 more. Okay, so that's understood. Option 2 is similar, right? Now you have 2 years of full-time employment, but you also have a completed degree in hospitality, right? And that needs to be at an accredited institution, right? And then your third option is, and I've been doing this for more than 15 years now. And in all that time, only one person has been in this category, and that is that you have 3 years of instruction in the hospitality industry in an institution of higher education. So let's roll out our polls again. Hopefully this one will work. I'm very, I don't trust them. So as I launch this poll, the question is, which of the option will you use on your application? That does not mean it has to be completed, right? It could be, in 2 years' time, I'm going to use option 1. So we'll give it a second more. Okay, and this is an interesting result. I like it. It just says that all of you are going to use option 1. That's what I would have done too. I used a different application. Okay, so let's look at the information that section 1 on the application is going to ask you, right? It's going to ask you what your title is, the name of the organization, what type of company is it? We manufacture carpeting, whatever it is, right? Your start and end dates, and they're going to ask you to convert that to the total number of months. So then they want a job description, and it should be detailed. Amy, I think that question is going. Amy asked if the 36 months have to be consecutive, and that answer is in your handbook, but the answer is no. It just, I think, needs to be within 5 years' time. So hopefully that helps. So the job description should be detailed, right? Sometimes, right, our human resources colleagues perhaps don't really understand what we do or even know the extent of what we do. And so you may want to, if you have one of those official job descriptions, you may want to add additional things that you do that are not included in your job description, right? Keep this really detailed. So questions that I get at this point kind of come up as, what if my job title doesn't say I'm a meeting professional? What if it says I'm a sales manager? Or what if it says I'm an administrative assistant? Or what if it says I'm a coordinator, right? Don't worry about that, right? More importantly is making sure that that job description is really detailed and that it demonstrates that you do tasks related to being a meeting professional, right? Other questions that come up are, I have more than one job, right, that makes up my experience, right? There'll be a button that you'll be able to click on and add another block of this information, right? So any questions about this? The only other part of of section 1 will be to attach an updated resume. Make sure you're including your current employment, right? And make sure it matches what you're claiming on your application. If I were reviewing applications, that would be a big red flag for me. Okay, that's section 1. Seems fairly easy, right? Okay, so section 2 is continuing education and internships. And again, the Events Industry Council has given us 2 options, and we only need to meet one requirement. So again, we may have it or we may be working toward it. So option 1 says that you have or are working toward 25 clock hours of continuing education that were earned in the past 5 years that are related to the meetings industry. And option 2 says that you have completed an industry internship of 200 or more hours within the last 5 years that was administered by an institution of higher education. So one more time, let's take a look at the polls and let's see where we lie. And again, right, we could be working toward these things. So we have 25 clock hours of continuing education, an internship, or I'll give you a third option, 25 hours. Oh my God, how am I going to do that? Now the answer to that question is, I'm going to show you. how to do that before the hour is done. So hang with me, because it's easier than you think. Okay, so we're at 25% said, oh my God, and 75% said, I'm going to go the 25 clock hour route. Okay, so that's good. That was also good. Lisa asks, does my study course count as credit? And the short answer is yes, and we'll get to the long answer at the end of the hour. Okay, so nobody claimed an internship, so I'm just going to skip right over this slide. Okay, so as we're thinking about continuing education, because most of us are going to claim that on the application, it's important to understand that as far as the Events Industry Council is concerned, there are really two types of continuing education. The first type is a type of continuing education that has been pre-approved by the Events Industry Council to apply toward the CMP, right? So they have looked over the syllabus and they have given it a stamp of approval and said, yes, if somebody takes this course and they put it on their application, it's going to be pre-approved. It's approved already. They'll get the credit for those hours. So we like that because that makes life really easy, right? In fact, it's so easy that the person who provides, or the organization who provides the education, actually uploads it directly into your Events Industry Council account, which means that you don't even have to do any work. That's a good thing, right? So the second type is a type of continuing education that may well be approved, but it has not been submitted to the Events Industry Council for their approval. So for these courses, you're going to need to upload the details about the course into your Events Industry Council account yourself. And you're going to need to attach documentation that will be proof that you attended the session, and also a description of what the session was about. So while you can do this, these sessions are not pre-approved, and so you could submit your application and not know whether, right, and not know whether the course that you're submitting is going to count towards your 25 clock hours. So that's a little bit riskier, right, but absolutely possible to do, right? Anna says, that's a good question, Anna. And in fact, I'm going to just do something for you so that you can see. Anna says that she took a few webinars that have been pre-approved, and that I'm logging into my account so you can see, and that they all show as 0 hours. And there's a reason for that, because you have to go in and claim the number of hours that you attended. So here's an example, right? Here's a session that they think I attended, right? And that it comes in at 0 hours. Now, what you can do is you can click here to edit your continuing education. This is my, my thing. So here it is. Now, you just click here, edit it, and you can change the number of hours. I'm not going to do it because, in fact, I didn't actually attend. I don't know why they gave me credit for it. I didn't actually attend this session. And so I'm not going to claim it, right? So that, hopefully that kind of clears that up. So anytime, and you'll get an email that says claim your hours. And that's what that email means, okay? So easier is the pre-approved, possible, right? But not quite as easy is the not pre-approved. So if your session is not pre-approved, this is the information you're going to need to have, right? You're going to need the session title. We're going to skip over the second line for a second. Who sponsored, or the provider of that education, where you took it, the date, and the clock hours. So let's say you took a course in managing a budget, right? You put the title of the course there. We'll skip over line 2 and come back to it in the next slide. The program sponsor was PCMA, right? You took it in Chicago, Illinois, USA. You'll put the date, and maybe it was 3 hours, right? So very easy. And remember, you're going to also need to attach documentation that shows that you attended the course and that you, and the syllabus. So, and there's more information about that, remember, in the CMP handbook. So if you're going to be doing this, definitely read that section of the handbook so that you attach as much documentation to support you claiming the hours. And that's important that you get credit for what you've done. Okay, so I skipped over a line, right? And if you notice, the second line said CMPIS domain. So what they're asking there is, remember I said about the body of knowledge, that the body of knowledge is called the CMPIS. So what they're wanting you to do is to compare the coursework that you took with the CMP International Standards, right? Because they want to make sure that it applies to the body of knowledge. So let's do that. Let's take a look at the CMP International Standards so you can figure this out, right? So the CMP International Standards is actually just a gigantic outline. Thankfully, at the beginning of the outline, they have a table of contents. This is the first half of the table of contents. We said we were going to take a course in managing a budget. So if we scan down this, we can see that the course clearly is going to fit into Domain D, Financial Management. And so on the application, there's going to be a field. You'll click on it. All the domains will scroll out. You'll choose the one that you need, and it's that simple. You don't need to make it more difficult than that. Okay, so questions I often get here are, what if all of my continuing education is in one area, one domain? And the answer is that they don't care, right? They probably would like it to be more spread out, but if it's all in one domain, so be it, right? Just to prove that there's more to the table of contents, there you go. And then, right, this is kind of the first half of the first page of the CMPIS. So what we see here is that the international standards is broken up into domain skills and sub-skills. And really what they're saying is, if you know this and you know how to do these things, you'll be successful on the exam. Now, it also kind of tells you exactly how much of this topic is going to appear on the exam. So that's very helpful in preparing. So Neil says, when I've completed webinars, I put webinar as the location. Is that appropriate, or should I put my current location? I don't know, Neil. Sometimes I think I say online as location. But I think that they get the point, right? That it wasn't a face-to-face. And I think actually that they should kind of fix the application and allow for that. The answer is yes, webinars, you can absolutely get credit for webinars. So, I think you're communicating that you weren't face-to-face, and that should do it. So let's wrap up the application. The application isn't subjective, right? If you meet the requirements, right, legitimately meet the requirements, and you provide the necessary documentation, you're going to be admitted into the program, right? It's not like, the application of old, which is the application that I filled out, was extremely subjective, and you would submit your application and go, I just don't have any idea, right? But especially if all of your coursework, all of your continuing education is all pre-approved, it's like a done deal, right? You're going to be admitted to the program. And so you need to start studying immediately, right? So I say that because a lot of people approach me and go, my my study group starts at specific times, all with the idea that you're ready in time to take the exam during the exam window. And people always come to me, can I start late? Well, why do you want to start late? Because I just submitted my application and I don't know if I've been accepted. And I always go, well, do you meet the requirements? Did you provide the documentation? You're going to be admitted. You need the time. Don't wait, right? And if you are submitting the application and you're going, gee, I don't know if I'm going to be accepted, maybe you should wait to submit your application until you know you'll be accepted. Right? That should be a hint to yourself, right? The Events Industry Council doesn't make exceptions to the requirements. So if you don't really meet the requirements, don't submit the application. So I'm just going to stop here because I can see that there are 2 questions I haven't answered. So, oh no, only one. L White in DC says, my company will pay my exam and app fees. Do I just enter their corporate card info when I submit the form online, or can they send in a check for me? How does this work? I'm gonna send you to the CMP handbook, and if we can't find the answer there because I don't know the answer to this, then I'm also going to send you an email address to the folks at the Events Industry Council. They're really nice. They'll answer your information, your question, and you'll be able to send in your application. Okay, we're going to start studying as soon as we submit our application. So the very first thing for you to do is to purchase the recommended study materials. Now, this isn't my recommendation. This is the Events Industry Council's recommendation. Okay, so they recommend that you purchase their manual called the Events Industry Council Manual in the 9th edition, which is available both in print and in ebook, right? And then published by PCMA is a manual called Professional Meeting Management. You want the 6th edition. Now, this manual is certainly available in print, and the print version is great. Right? I should say that the EIC's manuals, they're also great, whether it's print or ebook. I have both versions, and they're really good. The PCMA manual, the printed version is great. There is a Kindle version that a lot of the diagrams and tables are missing. So purchase that one. I have that one, and there are things that, yeah, and you can't print it. You wouldn't want to print it. I mean, if you go to print it, you might as well just purchase it in print. It's more than 350 pages. So why would you do that, right? Just purchase a printed one. And it's expensive to buy a PDF or buy the Kindle version. And then I think that there's like an ebook version. I just recently heard that. And I don't have any experience with that. Certainly I can understand wanting the manuals electronically. Back when I studied, I was traveling and I had to carry these manuals with me because there were certainly no ebooks back then. Now, the third item is a glossary. It's called the Events Industry Glossary. It's available online, free to use, and I'll provide the link in your handout. Of course, if you want to purchase it in print, you're welcome to do that. Okay. So my advice to you is that it is of paramount importance that you are working with the correct editions of both manuals. So remember, it's the Events Industry Council Manual, the 9th edition, and the Professional Meeting Management 6th edition. They are vastly different manuals than their previous editions. And every question on the exam is sourced from your manuals. So if you are working from the wrong manual and it has contradictory information from a previous manual, or the current manual, I should say, you're going to get the answer wrong. So if I beg you to work from the correct editions. You can very easily on eBay, you can often purchase the materials. Through social networking, you can often get materials. And of course, you can purchase them directly from the Events Industry Council, and I'll provide that link in the handout. So one of the things that we study in the CMP International Standards is project management. And this is a project, right? You got lots of steps and you got to do them in the right order and all of that stuff. So we call that your critical path, right? So let's talk about the project using project management terminology. So along your critical path, right, your first task is going to be to read that CMP handbook. And then you're going to submit your application. And this is a milestone because really not much else can happen, right, until you've done that, right? Once you do that, a whole lot of other tasks become available, like purchasing your study materials and joining a study group, right? And we're going to talk about why you should do that at the end. Just so you know, and if you're keeping track, that my next study group starts on August 6th at 8 p.m. Eastern. And the group after that, right, the August group will be completed in time to take the November exam. The October group will be completed in time to take the January exam. Okay. Each study session is 2 hours, and there are 15 of those sessions. Again, we'll get to that in the end. Okay, so the next step on your critical path, remember I said you're going to commit to taking the exam during the testing window. So you're going to make a decision. I'm taking the exam in November, right? Now, at this same time, if you speak English as a second language, you can request an additional 30 minutes of time. And if you have a documented disability, right, you can request an accommodation for the exam day. That includes a learning disability, right? So, because sometimes we need some accommodations to be more successful on the exam. So at this same point, this is where you make these requests. And I'll refer you to the CMP handbook about how to do that. Lisa says, will the August session be okay for the November exam? Absolutely, right? As long as you're ready, as long as your application is ready, right? We're going to talk about that. Yeah, you need your completed 25 clock hours of continuing education before you submit your application, and you can't take your exam until you've submitted your application. We're going to, again, at the end, I'm going to show you how that all works. So just stick with me. So the next step, right, will be to schedule your exam. This is another milestone, right? Now, exam appointments are available on a first-come, first-served basis. So you'll want to get in there and get your date, time, and location as soon as you're ready to. And again, the exam dates are the full months, every day in the month of January, May, August, and November. On to the exam. The exam is offered in secure testing facilities, so you will be taking the exam on a computer in that facility, right? And it will be 3.5 hours. Lisa, I'm missing words to your question, so I'm not sure I understand. It says, I've been an event planner for a required number of years. Is that sufficient for application? I don't know how many years it is. That seems to be missing from the question. Oh, 5 years. Yeah, that's more than 36 months, right? Okay, the exam has 165 multiple choice questions. There are no fill in the blank true or false or essay questions. There are always 4 possible answers for each question in the form of A, B, C, or D. Okay, questions are situational, not rote. So what does that mean? Well, it means that a question will describe a situation that a meeting professional might find themselves in, right? And then given that situation, they're going to ask for the best answer given the situation. Now, within those 4 questions or 4 possible answers, there are going to be answers that really look like they're correct. There'll be more than one that will look like they're correct, but there's only one correct answer. And that's what makes the exam difficult. So each exam is comprised of a new selection of questions from the CMP item bank, which is just a database of tens of thousands of questions that have been written by CMPs at one of those CMP-only events. It'll come back. Will you let me know if you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Okay, good. Okay, so the exam is comprised of a new selection of questions from the CMP item bank, which is just a database of tens of thousands of questions that have been written by CMPs at one of those CMP-only events called the CMP Conclave. I've been fortunate enough to attend 7, no, maybe 8 CMP conclaves. I know there was one conclave where I didn't write questions, so I've written questions on 7 different occasions, right? So what I can tell you about the questions is that they undergo a very stringent review process, right? CMPs review them, the CMP Board of Directors Exam Committee, and a third-party testing agency all review them, edit them, and make sure that they are good, right? Questions are going to be measuring your competency and skill. And as you can imagine, hang on. Writing and reviewing questions is an ongoing process to keep the exam current. So your results on the exam will be either a pass or a fail, and you'll receive these results on the day you take your exam. Okay, so how do we handle all of this? Where do we start? Is often a question that my students pose to me. And for that reason, right, I have started this CMP study group. Been doing this for more than 15 years. Now, what we know is that independent research shows that students who study as a group do better in their coursework than those who study on their own. So if you take anything away from today, be a part of a study group, right? Whether it's the one that I lead or another one that's out there, be a part of a study group. I will tell you that I totally credit the study group that I was in with my success on the exam. I could not have done it without them. So for the study group that I lead, your study group membership is good for 1 year from the date that you register for the study group. Okay, and there's an advantage for that for those of you who don't have your 25 clock hours of continuing education yet. So remember, you guys were going, well, what comes first? Application, right? I don't have the 25 clock hours. Here's the solution, right? Because the study group is an EIC preferred provider of continuing education, the 30 clock hours of the study group that I lead are already pre-approved by the Events Industry Council. So this is a fast and easy way to earn your hours while you prepare for the exam. And this is kind of the process, right? You join the study group, you have the year access, right? And you earn 2 hours of continuing education for every session that you attend. So if you need 25 clock hours, you're going to have to attend at least 13 sessions to get 26 hours, right? Everybody following me? Okay, once you've got your 25 clock hours, you submit your application, right? Now, typically what happens is you then don't have enough time. It's going to take somewhere between 3 to 5 weeks for your application to be approved. So you probably after 13 weeks, you may just squeak in. You may not have enough time to take the exam in that testing window, right? So let's say we're working toward the November timeframe, right? So what you would then do is join the next study group at no additional cost, because you're a member for a year, right? And you take the exam and you pass it. You've sat through the study group now 2 times, right? And you're going to be successful. I've had hundreds of students do that, and they're all successful, right? Now, if, however, you have your 25 clock hours and you're good to go, guess what? You'll be able to take your exam in November and pass it, right? So here's the goals of the study group, right? We study all the content of the CMP International Standards, right? We understand, I think it's important to understand how the exam is written. I think that there are hints in the questions, and if you're trained to find them, you're going to be able to easily determine which is the best correct answer, right? And then, of course, I want you to have confidence on exam day. Now, we use 2 online tools. We're using one now, Zoom, right? We do a live study session, mostly on Monday nights. There are a few exceptions to that. And then we also have an online classroom environment that you have access to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that has all kinds of resources in it, including an online quiz program. So as we said earlier, right, it's 15 sessions. Each session is 2 hours. That gets us our 30 clock hours, right? Our first session begins August 6th at 8 p.m. That happens to be a Tuesday night. And each week we talk about reading material that you will have read for the week. You'll take a quiz, and we'll talk about how the exam is assembled. I see some questions. Anna says, so if I join the study group in August, I won't be able to test in November unless I already have 25 clock hours. That is true, right? You must earn those clock hours, submit your application. It will take 3 to 5 weeks for your application to be approved. And then you have to, hopefully, if it could be that you could fit it in, Anna, right? But I'm not guaranteeing that, because I don't know, A, how many clock hours you already have, and B, I don't know how fast they're going to approve you. So I can tell you that some people have managed to do it in one thing, right? So if you can't get approved before the November exam dates are done, you'll take the exam in January, and you can sit through the study group a second time. Michelle says, I'm not quite at 25 hours, but using your next course starting on August 6th to round out my hours and want to take the exam in November. Can I say, absolutely. As soon as you have your 25 clock hours, Michelle, submit that application, because you have 3 to 5 weeks to wait until you get approved. Does today's webinar count for continuing education? No, it does not. M. Glick asks, are the study sessions only live, or can you catch up if you miss a couple due to vacation and the like? Melissa. The answer is everything is recorded, and you'll see that in just a slide or two. So yes, you can catch up if you need to. Okay, so everybody is usually interested in how much homework is this going to mean, right? So the first 12 of the 15 sessions are content sessions. So you're going to have a reading assignment of about 100 pages each week. I'm going to ask that you do some vocabulary note cards, and you'll take a weekly practice quiz. You can't apply. L. Bodzioni says, I'm confused. I thought I couldn't apply until I got to 25 hours. You can't. You can't apply until you get to 25 hours, right? But Michelle says she has a whole lot of them, but she's not quite at 25 hours, right? So as she earns, and each week I'm going to upload 2 hours into your account, right? So at some point, let's say she has 20 hours, right? Yeah, you can be in the study group without applying. Absolutely. So if you have 15 hours, you need 5 sessions, right? 5 sessions is going to get you 10 hours, right? So that's 5 weeks in. You'll have plenty of time then to apply, be approved, and take the exam in November, right? See, it's hard to say it because everybody has a different amount of time. So I start with assuming that you have no time. And then if you have some time, right, you may get in, right? You may make the time frame. Homework for our review sessions is a little different, right? We have some worksheets and you're going to be studying and doing all those things. You'll also have 4 practice tests to build stamina and develop good test-taking habits. We'll do some math review. There's a bunch of things that we do during that time. L. White, DC says, I attended IMEX last year and need help getting my CEs applied to my account. The only problem is my nickname and work email were used during IMEX. My CMP app is under my legal name and personal email. Help. Contact IMEX, right? And have them write a letter, right? So that, and they're going to be familiar. In fact, all of the organizations that are members of the Events Industry Council are familiar, right, with this need. They're going to be familiar with the fact that you need to have proof, right? Contact them, explain the situation, right? IMEX replied and sent me to the EIC. Well, I'm going to send you a email address and a phone number for the Events Industry Council. And I would absolutely send that question to them if that's what IMEX did. So look for that in the handout, L. White, DC. You're very welcome. Okay, so clearly the CMP Study Group gives you that 30 hours of training. It's pre-approved by the Events Industry Council. It's a done deal, right? We have a 98% success rate, right? You have access to the sessions in classroom from anywhere, and all live sessions are recorded for those who have time conflicts, right? A lot of my students also sit down and listen to all the recordings a second time as they're reviewing. The study group is $399 for the full year of membership and the 30 hours of training that you can take up to 4 times during that year, right, if you hit the timing right. So we are kind of at the end of the hour. So any other questions? Anybody remaining confused regarding what they need to do, what their personal CMP action plan is? What I will say is that often people, you know, we end the session and then something occurs to you. I would ask that you give me a phone call. I know that seems weird. You go, oh, I don't want to bother her. I'll send her an email. Actually, the email kind of drives me crazy because usually I have to ask you a number of questions before I can answer your question. And if we do that, it'll take a week by email. But if we do it on the phone, it'll take 5 minutes. So please feel free to call me. Again, all my contact information will be on that handout that I emailed to you. C. Taylor says, this is a great session. Can you repeat the prices? It's $399. Thank you, Amy. You can be my sales assistant. The crash course is slightly different, right? The crash course is meant for people who go, oh man, I signed up to take the exam in a month's time or in 2 weeks and I haven't started studying, right? So it's not live, it's recorded, you don't get CE for it, and people are successful with it, but if you have the time, I totally recommend doing the long form version, the study group. The crash course is really meant for people who are in trouble, right? Don't be that girl or guy. Right? You don't want to be in that position. That is not a fun position to be in. but I get a ton of calls from people in that position. And so it's at least something for them to use, right? They have access to the recordings for 30 days, and that's it. They don't get the questions or the quizzes or the practice tests. They don't have access to me, right? That is really like for an oh my God situation. Any other questions for me? Because we're really through the hour. No, they say 3 to 5 weeks for application approval. Now, I've had students who have told me that, man, it came back really quicker, came back quicker than that, but you can't count on it. Okay, so I just want to thank you for spending the afternoon with me. I'm so glad you thought that, L. White DC. um, uh, I want to thank you for spending time with me, and I just want to wish you all the very best in your CMP endeavors. Well, I'm looking forward to that too, Neil. Yeah, the follow-up email will absolutely have information about registering. Thanks, guys. What a nice group of people. I really enjoyed spending today with you. Take it easy.